Trying to homeschool multiple ages comes with its own set of challenges, and as anybody knows who has even more than one child that they are homeschooling, you can get very overwhelmed by trying to figure out how to homeschool these multiple ages and stages. And so today I want to talk to you about that in this podcast. I want to pinpoint some of the challenges and then give you some strategies and ideas for managing and overcoming those particular challenges. So let's dig in. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Raising Arrows podcast, where we discuss all things large family homemaking and homeschooling. I'm Amy Roberts from raisingarrows.net, and this is episode number 158, The Challenges of Homeschooling Multiple Ages. Today's sponsor is Bible Investigators Creation from the Good Book Company and Danica Cooley. This is a really fun way to be doing Bible study, and so I'll be sharing about that later in the podcast. So as you know, I have a large family. I am currently homeschooling 5, which is less than I have been homeschooling in quite some time. In our homeschool right now, I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And at any given time in my homeschooling career, I have had all the way from high school down to preschool. And so I am no stranger to challenges in homeschooling multiple ages because that's pretty much all I've ever had. Now, I do remember the years of homeschooling only one child. I did have a baby at the time, but it was not nearly as difficult as it was when I started adding kids. And I remember being very freaked out by adding the next child. And I continued to feel that way probably until I added number 4. And then after that, I had kind of found my rhythm and I knew how to add kids to the homeschool. I do actually have a post on adding children to your homeschool that you might be interested in looking at because I know how daunting it can feel to start to add kids in, especially when you're not used to adding kids in. And so you might want to take a look at that just to kind of familiarize yourself with ways that you can make it easier to bring new kids into your homeschool as they get to that age. But today we're going to talk about specific challenges that come with homeschooling multiple ages and grades and stages and children and all that comes with that and how you can manage those things or overcome those things. The first challenge I want to talk about is just the fact that you are homeschooling a lot of different grade levels. That is kind of the overarching issue that homeschool moms have when they're homeschooling multiple ages, is just trying to wrap their brain around the fact that you have all these different age of children. How are you going to homeschool all of them? Part of the issue that is causing this is that you probably have a little bit of a public school mindset. And what that means is that you have been used to the public school paradigm that says, you have kids who are this age, they go into this grade, and all their curriculum is tailored toward that grade. So when you think about each one of your children, you are thinking about them as a grade level, and you are thinking about them as a full curriculum per child, per grade level. So you don't just have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. You have each one of their grades in a full curriculum, everything from phonics to math to science to history to whatever it is. You are thinking of them as this full grade. And that is absolutely overwhelming because if you had a school teacher who had to go in and teach 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 10th, that would be very, very daunting and almost absolutely impossible. So you have to kind of step back from that box mentality of this is the age my child is, and therefore all of their stuff has to be this age-graded curriculum. That's not true because kids can learn these different things at different ages, and you can teach them all together, which we will be talking about in a moment. But you have to allow yourself to let go of that public school model and not get caught up in trying to get curriculum that fits every single child as a full graded curriculum. So one of the best things I ever did to help me teach a lot of different ages was to implement some sort of together time. It currently for us looks like a morning time, but when I first started, it was a little morning time and a little afternoon time. And the way that it worked was I would bring everybody together to start our school day for kind of a mock morning time. It was a very simple morning time. All it was Bible and a read aloud. 9 times out of 10, the read aloud came from our history curriculum that then I would do all together in the afternoon with the children who were old enough. In the in-between time, everybody would do their independent schoolwork. The independent schoolwork were the things that were age graded. So I would have, a little kid who was doing phonics and math and handwriting. And then as it worked its way up, there were more and more things that they were doing that were specific to each child. But as they got older, they were able to handle those things on their own and didn't need me as hands-on as much. And so the independent schoolwork was what was the age graded stuff. The things that we could do together, those were things that did not need to be separated out into a specific grade. So for instance, history, there is absolutely no need for history to be a graded curriculum. History can be taught to multiple different ages, and you can work your way through all of history without needing to separate it out into ages. Now, you could also do this with science. That's not something that I do. I actually do separate out science and have my kids do that on their own, but that would be something as well that does not need to be separated out into a specific grade level. Certainly, you have different requirements per state for graduation that requires them to take certain sciences, and oftentimes those are very obviously put into different grade levels. Typically, biology is a freshman or sophomore thing, and then you have chemistry, and then of course you have your advanced sciences that can't come until after you've done your preliminary work. And so yes, typically there's an order to things, but you don't necessarily have to follow that order by a specific grade level. You could put everybody together and you could do those things together and then just move through it together and not worry about what grade people are in. Art history, music history, all of your fine arts kinds of things can definitely be done together. And when your children are very young, you can even do your math together. If you don't have wide age gaps, everybody can kind of move through the material together, and then eventually you can break off into individual graded curriculum. Now, something I do want to say about independent schoolwork, and this is something I have on the blog, a post talking all about it, because it is an opportunity for your children to do their own work and to own their own work, and for you to not have to be so hands-on. Independent schoolwork is meant to be just that. Independent. Now, obviously, your children are going to probably have questions and need help along the way, but those independent school subjects should be something that they start to completely own on their own, figuring out the answers. You check in with them periodically, but it's not something that you are teacher-intensive, hands-on all the time with them. Now, I do consider independent schoolwork for my little girls something like phonics, math, and handwriting, and I am pretty intensive currently with them because they're little, but I can see a big difference between the 7-year-old and the 9-year-old, even with how much they can do on their own. I'm able to just hand out the problems that they're supposed to do. They go do it. They have me check it and we're done. My older kids use for math teaching textbooks and it checks it for you, sends me the grade. It has tutorials and things like that to help them through. I am very not hands-on at this point with their math. Giving your kids these independent classes to do on their own and then just check in with you is a really good way to help them to learn responsibility. Obviously, you need to still be making sure they're doing the work. That's one reason I really do like that teaching textbooks sends me the grades, because then I know that they've done the work. But you do need to come to a place where you are handing off that educational responsibility to your children, because they need to learn how to learn, and you've guided them hopefully through the process, and then now you are giving them the tools and the opportunity to try it on their own. And that gives you a break as well. It takes some of that burden of the teacher intensive stuff off of you. And again, I have an entire post about that. And then I also have a class, Creating a Homeschool Schedule You Love, where I talk extensively about how to decide which classes should be independent and which classes should go into the together time. So if you're interested in that, you'll find that down in the show notes. Earlier in the podcast, I told you about our sponsor, Bible Investigators Creation from the Good Book Company. This is a joint project with my friend Danica Cooley, and it is a Bible study that's 272 pages of learning, puzzles, fun activities, and they're designed to help your kids become really good independent Bible investigators with an observation and interpreting and applying God's Word as they learn what the Bible teaches on a particular subject, but it does it in a really fun way. And so they're digging into things and then they're doing these puzzles alongside this Bible study that they're doing. And so it's a really unique way to do Bible study. And I think it would be a fantastic addition to your homeschool, especially for your 8 to 12-year-old aged kids, where they can do some of that Bible study on their own, really dig deep into the Word and have fun while they're doing it. So check out this brand new book, Bible Investigators Creation. You can find it at places like Amazon, Christian Book, thinkingkidspress.com, and Barnes & Noble. Okay, so another challenge is one child needing more attention or more help than some of the other kids. How do you handle something like that where one child needs help, they need you to explain things to them, they need you to walk them through things more, and you just aren't really sure how you're going to find the time to focus on that one child when you have all these other kids who also need you? So this is definitely a difficult situation, especially when you have a child who is more, high needs, needs more hand-holding through the process of education. And so what I would encourage you to do there is to start your day with them and give yourself a specific amount of time that you're going to work with them. And then when that time is up, even if you have to set a timer, when that time is up, then you stop what you're doing with that child and you move on to the other children. And then if you need to circle back and work with them again, you can. But it may be too that this particular child, if it's an educational issue, that they need to have short, small lessons where you explain things, you handhold, you walk them through, and then you move on and let them take a break. Or you may need to let them try to do it on their own while you work with the other kids. But do not let yourself be completely consumed by that child's needs so that you aren't there for the other children, but help them to understand that you need to spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, with this one child working on these particular items, and then you move on. Now, if that drains you, which sometimes it does, if working with that one child drains you, give yourself a built-in break there as well. 10 minutes, step away, go take a walk, go to your room, go someplace quiet. Give yourself a little bit of breathing space so that you can jump back in to help the other children. But I would really give yourself a specific amount of time. Don't let it be all day long. Don't let it consume you. Take a break and move on. And like I said, if you need to, circle back, but don't let that one child dominate the entire school day. And if you realize that this is beyond your ability, be willing to say, I need help. I need to outsource this. I need to find a tutor. I need to do something like that that allows you to hand some of that burden off to someone else. Now, when you do outsource things, you need to make sure that the outsourcing doesn't cause even more burden to you, because that can easily happen where you end up running to and fro to all these different tutors and classes. And there again, your entire day has been monopolized by one child. And that is very, very difficult to see until you're in the middle of it and you're overwhelmed and then you don't know how to get out. So really try to be aware as you're walking this road that you need to not allow one child to take over everything, and that you need to give that child a specific slot of time. There needs to be specific things that happen during that time, and then you need to move on to the next child. Now, if it is an attitude issue and not an educational issue, this is an entirely different situation. I have a couple of posts on my blog about girls and their attitudes and boys and their attitudes, and I'd encourage you to take a look at those. I think I also have podcasts on that topic as well. Those will help you understand a little bit of the pushback that comes from both boys and girls and how you can head that off and heal some of those relationships. Because a lot of times it's a relationship issue. It has nothing to do with the schoolwork. Now, I will say sometimes it does have to do with the schoolwork. Sometimes the schoolwork is difficult and they don't know how to handle difficult things. And you need to have a conversation with them regularly about where they stand with the educational material. How are they feeling about it? What can we do to help you with this? And not leave them just floundering to figure it out on their own, because that most definitely can create attitude problems. If a child feels like they don't understand the material, they begin to hate school, they begin to hate everybody around them, and they don't know what to do with all those emotions and frustration that's welling up in them, and it comes out as attitude problems. So if it is an attitude of a specific child or children that you're dealing with, then you need to take a step back from the education and work on the relationships. You may need to turn your entire schooling on its head so that you are more about building relationships as a mom and less about being this school marm who's down your kids' throats about their homework. At the end of the day, your children will learn more if they are learning from a mom who cares as opposed to a teacher who is frustrated with them. And then finally, I just want to touch on the everyone needing you all the time challenge that comes with homeschooling multiple children. We talked a little bit about this with the different grade levels, but it's beyond just the children you are homeschooling. You may also have babies and toddlers who also need you. You may have a husband who is working from home and needs you. You may have young adult children who are still in the home after they've graduated and they need you for something. It seems like everybody needs mom. There are times when it is not unusual for me to hear 5 different voices saying mom at the very same time, and they all need something and they're all going to talk to me all at the same time. And I'm like, whoa guys, wait. And I have to try to figure out like who should talk first because they all need something. And this is just the nature of having a lot of kids and homeschooling a lot of kids. They are definitely all going to need you at some point in time. If they don't need you for something, they may not actually be doing their schoolwork and you probably ought to go check on them. But kids just need mom. They need their mom. They need their teacher to come and explain things to them, check over their work. They need reassurance. They need to know that they're doing something correctly or incorrectly. They're frustrated by something, whatever it is, they are going to need you. And quite often when you have a lot of kids, several of them are going to need you at once. So how do you handle that as a mom who's trying to homeschool all these multiple ages? Well, first of all, do some sort of morning time like we talked about. Do some sort of together time where several of the subjects, you're doing them all together. Everybody's right there. The questions can be asked right there about what you're talking about, and that will cut down on some of these individual questions. Then when you move to independent school, I'd encourage you to start with the youngest child first and work your way up and let everybody know that that's what you're doing. I'm working with so-and-so first. I will get to you in a bit. Hold your question, write it down, whatever it is you think you need to do in order to remember it. However, I have found quite often with that method that by the time I get to that child, they've worked it out. So often I will come up there and be like, okay, it's your turn now. And my son will be like, oh, actually figured it out. No big deal. I'm like, okay, all he needed was a little bit extra time with the problem to figure it out. But if he doesn't have it figured out, I'm there. And a lot of times what I'll tell them to do is just move on to the next problem. I can come back and help you with that one and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Even if you get it wrong, we can go back and fix it and work on it together. It'll be all right. It'll hold. Let me work with your little sisters first, and then I'll be up there to help you. And the kids have come to a place where they realize that I am always going to defer to the youngest one first, and then I'm going to work my way up. And I start with those little girls doing their phonics and their handwriting and their math. We do it at the dining room table. It takes us, maybe 30 minutes to work through all of that. And then I have all the rest of the afternoon to work with my boys. But most of the time, they don't need that much. Sometimes it's computer issues. They need me to fix some computer thing, or they don't know what to do next. They've finished a certain chapter in the Bible. What book of the Bible do I go to next? So those are more the questions that they have. And those questions can hold. Those can wait. They're not that big a deal. The only time I would encourage you to not start with the youngest is if you have a child who does have major educational needs, like we talked about earlier, where you would work with them first. And if that's the case, let the younger ones go and play and then bring them back to wherever it is that you're homeschooling in order to work with them. But start with the hardest. Start with the most teacher intensive. And currently for me, that's my younger kids. And so whatever it is that's going to take the most energy for you, that's where you want to start. And then you work your way up to the kids who are more independent and who are better able to do things on their own and work out their own problems. That's all I have time for on this podcast, but if you have other challenges that you would like me to address, please drop me a line at amy@raisingarrows.net. I'm sure it will make it into another podcast. This has been the Raising Arrows podcast, where we discuss all things large family homemaking and homeschooling. I hope you've gotten some great ideas for overcoming the challenges in your homeschool. I will see you next time.